Fanatic Nate, coming at you to reveal a review. I guess I'm revealing what I feel about this movie, but I'm coming at you to review the fifth. I mean, I don't even know if I even consider this the fifth. I don't know if I mean, technically it's the fifth Phantasm movie, which originally was not even a movie, or it still isn't in my opinion, unfortunately. It was originally like a web series or something. I don't know how many parts it was. It should have just been that and leave it at that, because then, I don't know. To you people who actually like this movie, sorry, I'm gonna rain on your parade. I'm coming at you to review the fifth and final, at least with the original cast. I'm sure they'll do. I'm sure that someone's trying to get this remade somewhere. Fifth and final Phantasm movie by the name of Phantasm Ravager. Is that how you say it? I don't. Maybe I missed it, but I don't know what the hell that word has to do with the movie. It's kind of a cool word. I guess Oblivion was never really explained for the fourth one. I've reviewed, all four Phantasm movies leading up to this years ago, so feel free to check those reviews out. And I will. It's coming later. I don't know if it'll be this year. Maybe next year, early next year. I also got the Blu-ray of the remastered Phantasm, which I haven't had a chance to look at yet. But be sure to keep an eye out for that. I'm going to watch that and do a Blu-ray review of the Phantasm Blu-ray. Probably not this year, probably early next year. But since this recently came out on Blu-ray, on video, I figured it's kind of a no-brainer. You kind of have to get it, Phantasm 5, even though my expectations were not even, they weren't even low, they weren't even above ground enough to be low. It was just my expectations for this movie were on the ground. They were lower than low. They were on the ground. Unfortunately, even going into this movie with those expectations, this movie still just like, oh my gosh. If you watch my review of Phantasm 4, you'll know that I thought that movie compared to like 3 was just, holy cow. Like, I did rewatch all the Phantasms like this fall, so I did see 4 again. And I guess because I knew what 4 was more than when I saw it recently this year, it wasn't as bad, and I can see how people like it because of they make up for the lack of budget on 4 for like the kind of cool ideas. It's more about ideas than like on-screen like action and spectacle. And also using, of course, of the original, or the footage, unused footage from the first one. So 4 wasn't, it was still bad when I watched it this year, but not as bad. I could kind of see why people, are a little easier on 4 than I am. But, all up to speed on, watching all the 4 Phantasms and then coming onto this, it's just like, oh my gosh, the fourth. One thing that's a problem with 4, and at the time I would imagine that they kind of thought maybe 4 was going to be the last one at the time, which it almost was. And in a way, in my opinion, it kind of still is. Like I say, I don't necessarily know if I'm going to even consider this, Phantasm 5. It's just like Phantasm, I don't know what it is, Phantasm fan film, Phantasm what if, Phantasm fluke. But 4 ended in a very, for being potentially the end of the series with 4. They ended it just like the end of all of the others, where it's just like, you don't know what the hell's going on. So 5, onto the review of 5. 5 begins with just Desert Reggie, after the Battle of 4, just in his ripped up, torn up Ice Cream Man outfit. This is almost made 20, get this, it's almost made almost 20 years after 4. Like, what is the point of that? The greatest amount of space in between any Phantasm movie. It's greater than the space between 1 and 2, and 2 and 3, and 3 and 4. Almost 20 years of time has passed since Phantasm 4. I just don't understand why wait so long to do this, But we cut to, Reggie's just, in my opinion, the best part of the movie is the beginning, where it's just kind of like Reggie, someone had since taken the Cuda, and like the beginning he's just like wandering the desert with his 4-barrel shotgun, and then some guy driving his Cuda, this really annoying guy who just seems like some fan who won the chance to be in this Phantasm web series. Just like he's just this guy who plays the guy who stole Reggie's car is just like so annoying, and you just want him dead. Luckily he does die, not for real. Only in the movie, unfortunately, but that's kind of mean. But I didn't really like this guy, the guy who played this guy, or this guy who played that part. I was just like, oh man, something about him just, it's just like the fan who, won the part, their chance to be in a Phantasm movie. So in a kind of a cool way, Reggie ends up getting in this car, and there's a gun hidden in the center console, and it's not there, it's a glove box. Get out of my fucking car. That's kind of cool. And then that guy ends up taking that guy's clothes, and he pulls away, and then a sphere. This is one of my complaints with the movie. A sphere will end up coming, on the road, and get this guy who stole his car, who's just standing there in his underwear. It's really gross. In the back of the head, drills this guy and kills him. That's one of my big problems with this movie. Spheres, up until now, I can't remember, I don't think there's much spherage even in 4, but up until now, the majority of the Phantasm movies, if not every single moment, I think the spheres had only basically been in, unless it was like Jody as his black burnt sphere, all of the tall man spheres I think were pretty much only made an appearance in the mausoleums and the kind of tall man domain, if you will, the funeral home / mausoleum environments is where the spheres typically only showed up in. And all of a sudden in this movie, which very much, I seen this comment in a forum which I completely agree with, this movie plays it just plays like a fan film. It's like somehow a fan in high school or middle school basically got Angus Scrimm, Reggie Bannister, all the original cast from the first movie, and just was able to make this little high school or middle school fan film. And all of a sudden the spheres are just flying around the desert. Reggie ends up at some farm. Of course, because, you can't do... It's just like Reggie, every single movie, part 2 he picks up a girl, part 3 he picks up a girl, part 4 he picks up a girl. Actually part 2 he actually starts to get some, and then I'm still confused anyway, whether he's getting some or about to get some in 2, because she's got underwear on. But anyway, 3 he kind of doesn't get some, but he does in some kind of cool, illusion or dream or some kind of weird thing. 4 he's too old, he doesn't get any. And then 5, of course, he doesn't get any, but then she's I think she kind of decides to, and she comes down and he's asleep. It's just oh my God, when he's at the old folks home, and he's yeah, every good story starts with a girl, and of course he picks up, it's just oh my God, here we go again. The 4th time, we see this same thing, Reggie picking up a girl. By this time he's I don't know what he is, and they made this movie. I mean, he doesn't look, he's fantastic in the movie. I mean, he's mid to late 60s in this movie or what. But that's one thing I want to say about the movie, is that, that's another thing I was going to say, that I was getting to I'm all over the place, sorry. He ends up at this girl's farm, and then there's spheres flying around the barn and killing a horse and flying into the barn. There's just spheres where they don't belong, in my opinion. But anyway, getting back to one of the only positives I have to say about this movie. Positives, 2 words. Reggie Bannister. I don't know how old he was when he did this movie, but I gotta tell you, Reggie carries this he hasn't aged a bit. He hasn't lost it. He's still got it. He actually does some really cool. I don't want to make too big a deal out of it, where he's just, this character by this point in time in this movie is just so fed up with all this shit. He's got some really cool like cussing scenes and scenes where his character is really, kind of pissed off. And Reggie Bannister, if it wasn't for this movie, it pretty much is completely unwatchable in my opinion as it is. But seeing this, the one good thing about this project is seeing this, this guy who's been this character since 1979, just for one final time, presumably stepping back into this part to just have one last hurrah or whatever. And so, in my opinion, the strongest thing to this movie is Reggie Bannister. Well done, fantastic. Okay, maybe not fantastic, but Reggie Bannister he hasn't lost it, in my opinion. I mean, he's, however old he is in this movie, he's still got it. He's still the same great character, and unfortunately, except for the very brief appearance, once again for the first time as the character since the first movie, she was, I think, the nurse for a brief amount of time in Phantasm 3 for like literally seconds. But this woman reprising her role as the lady in Lavender returns, and she looks pretty good still, and I was really surprised about that. And I don't know if she's got boob work done or whatever, but regardless, she's got some nice cleavage going on. And I was, having seen the movie, I was extremely disappointed in how little she was actually used in the movie. She's just one kind of cool scene in the mausoleum, which looks like the same set or the same location. It's not a set, it's a real place probably, but it looks like the same one used in Phantasm 3, which is fine, because I don't know if they even had any mausoleum scene in the fourth one. I want to say there isn't at all, which is kind of a bummer. So at least they had Reggie walking around with his I don't know if he had his fort. No, sometimes he had this machine gun in the movie. So there was a brief scene where he was in this mausoleum place in this cool bit where the lady in Lavender is kind of just like hovering, and she's like, you've seen it in the trailer. And unfortunately, that's like all that happens in the movie. Then she turns into some kind of gross-looking thing, and he shoots her in the head, and that's it. That she's, she looked pretty good still, and to utilize her, to have her barely in the movie, to me was really kind of stupid. Because this movie doesn't really have much in the line of means to do much at all. It kind of does this cool, Jesus, I almost said cool thing. It does this kooky thing, which I really got sick of very early on, where it kind of the movie plays with like time, dimensions and all this and that, like, well, you can be in the same like dimension, or you can be in different dimensions at the same time, and all this kind of stuff going on at the same time in different spaces and stuff. So the movie basically plays with that aspect of being in all these different times, the same character being on Reggie being in all these different, maybe 2 or 3 different times and locations all at once. So we end up always cutting back to, the movie kind of plays with this cool idea is like, because very early on where we cut to Reggie being, visited by Mike in like an old folks home or a loony bin or whatever. So we're kind of playing with the notion of, has all this stuff in the whole Phantasm series actually happened, or is it all just a fanatical ravings of this Reggie, aging Reggie Bannister character in the old folks home, which is kind of cool, but it's just like, the way they play it in the movie is like, I don't know, not really playing with that aspect as much as it is just one of the old folks home is just one of the timelines. So you really, yeah. And then there's this one point in the movie where he actually wakes up, he's like rescued, Reggie Bannister is rescued by, I don't know why I say Bannister, I can just say Reggie, is rescued by, I think, Mike, from this, this laying on this thing basically with his head between these two like miniature chrome poles and stuff. So what I thought would be really cool and what they were going to do is I thought they were going to have Reggie's character having been there since like the end of the first movie, and it's like everything he experienced after that has all been in this in his mind, So I thought as soon as they rescued him from in between those two head, those poles on each side of his head, I thought that was going to be the end of the old folks home. But no, they still, because he was actually woken up there, that was reality. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. But no, they even after he's rescued from that, he's still cut back to old folks home and shit. It's just like, oh man, to figure out what you want to do and do it. It's just like, oh. Angus Scrimm, the first time you see him in this movie is really sad because it literally looks like they filmed him on his deathbed. And he's like, oh, you know, he basically plays one final time in bed, like the Jebediah Morningside, you know, laying next to Reggie in a hospital bed. And it's, oh my God, it's like literally they filmed him like the day before he died. It's just so sad seeing him in like that, in a hospital bed like that. That's the first time you actually see Angus Scrimm in this movie, and then the rest of it I think is Tall Man. Again, like I said, why wait so long? Why wait nearly 20 years after 4? Maybe 10 years would have been better or less or something. Somehow, I don't know if it's, you know, CG makeup or real life makeup or something, but when Angus Scrimm is actually the Tall Man, somehow they do manage to, I don't know, somehow, I guess just because of him, you know, just because it's Angus Scrimm, it doesn't really matter how old he is. It's still him, it's still his voice, it's still his presence. So somehow he I will say he kind of pulls off Tall Man even at his age and even with his like physical appearance. I mean, I don't really know how I feel. I mean, it's, you know, I guess it's the voice, you know, I don't know. This movie utilizes a lot of digital trickery where there's one scene where he goes into like the future and like presumably, well, on the back of the box or somewhere I read that it's like the battle, an ultimate battle between, you know, on the Tall Man's planet. So I just thought it was like Earth, you know, the future, what he'd turn the, you know, Earth into, but I don't know if we're, you know, because you know that red Martian, you know, landscape we see like all the time in Phantasm 1 and 2 and stuff. I guess from wherever I read it says, I mean, the end of the movie is supposed to take place there, but all the environment is basically just, I mean, it's kind of like literally one shot where it's like going through all this, like, you know, pandemonium and hell and this, you know, just whatever, Phantasm Tall Man world. It's literally like goes into a video game where it's all just computer generated, just everything, and just zooms up into Reggie's face in the old folks' home. And oh man, so a lot of this movie, you know, obviously when it takes place in like the, whatever you want to call it, Tall Man's world or planet or whatever, it's just filmed in front of green screen, and it just looks, I mean, it looks, like I say, like just like a fan film, you know. There's a scene, obviously, in one of the trailers we've seen years ago when I reviewed, or when I did a video on my thoughts at the time about Phantasm 5. There was a shot, I don't know if the shot existed then, probably did, but regardless, it was in one of the trailers where it was like a huge sphere, you know, Reggie was like, oh, you know, there's this huge sphere up in the sky, and he's just like, oh, cool, you know, based on that shot in the trailer, what are they going to do with it? And they don't do anything with it. That's all it is in the movie. It's just this huge sphere, and it's just like, oh, and then he goes like, yeah, you know, in between the two chrome poles, and he disappears. Like, they don't even do anything with it. Later on, there's like a shot of an actual building demolition that they made it look like in, you know, visual effects, that a huge sphere was like lasering the building down and cutting it in half, which just like, oh man. So it's really a shame. It's really a shame. Long story short, that's all I can say about this movie. You know, that it should be called Phantasm. I just came up with a tagline for this movie. Ready? Phantasm Ravager. It's really a shame. I mean, if you like it, more power to you. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but just, you know, coming from the greatness of Phantasm, the first one, you know, Phantasm 2 I like, having rewatched 3 this fall, that is even really good, you know, when you compare it to 4. To me, I think in my mind, for the most part, it ends with 3. One thing I don't like about 4 is the fact that the kid is just completely, you know, usually they'll dispense with people from sequels and make it you know, they'll explain where they went. The kid from 3 just disappeared, and there was nothing even mentioned about him in 4 or 5. It would have been cool to see him in 5. We actually, one of the cool things about 5 is that after the movie's over, we see some, like, you know, some little bit of scenes, like, kind of in between the end credits or whatever, where Rocky actually, from part 3, actually makes an appearance again, and which is kind of cool. It would have been cool to see that boy from 3, you you know, grown up or whatever, you know, do something like that. But I don't mean to break you guys' hearts, but my star rating for Phantasm Ravager, hold on to your hats and seats, a 1/4 star out of 4 stars. I'm afraid I can't go any higher than that. Every time they cut back to like the nut house or the old folks home, and Mike just looking almost older than Reggie and just talking to him, and I just rolled my eyes every time they cut back to him. They try to do this post-apocalyptic Terminator thing, and it's just like whatever. They have the CUDA all like, you know, minigun. That was kind of cool at the very end of the movie when like Jodie appears, and there's this really cool line, because at the very beginning of the first Phantasm movie, it's like when their one friend died. It's like hell of a way to end a trio. I will give them props for doing this, putting this line at very close to the end of the movie. You know, having Bill Thornbury, you know, Reggie's character, the character of Jodie and Reggie and Mike all being together, and like Bill and Jodie characters saying, you know, hell of a way to start a trio versus end. That was kind of cool, and I wonder whose credit, you know, that line goes to, if it's the guy who directed this or if it's Coscarelli line. That was kind of cool, seeing him like Jodie, you know, save the day in a, you know, post-apocalyptic Hemi Cuda with the frickin' miniguns on the side, even though it's all like digital, you know, muzzle blasts or whatever. It was kind of cool. The end, just seeing them together, whatever, and Jodie coming, you know, for presumably a day of shooting just for the end, and like seeing them all together, all 3 of them together at the end or whatever. And then, you know, Reggie's character in the old folks home dies, and I don't know. 1/4 star out of 4 stars. Spheres shouldn't be just flying down the highway and in the barns and at your farm and drilling horses in the head. It just, I don't know. I mean, as much as I don't like rules, the Phantasm movies, you know, 1, 2, and 3 have kind of always been like spheres have just been in kind of the mausoleum areas, whatever. I mean, if you like spheres flying down the street, the highway, that's, you know, again, more power to you, but it doesn't really work for me. I was just really surprised how, like, no budget this was, and in a way it should have just remained a web series. And then there's even the deleted scene with Derek Mears as like a huge dwarf. You know, they kind of did a little play on the dwarf characters by having Reggie kill a dwarf, and then the dwarf coming back like huge, like ha ha ha, how ironic, in a scene that was cut. Which is just as well, because it was just like, oh my gosh. So feel free to let me know what you think of Phantasm Ravager. I don't regret buying it, because I don't know. I don't know why. I guess I have the final Phantasm movie with the original cast in my collection. I don't know. But I think there's commentary with the, you know, the director and Coscarelli, so I might actually have to listen to that just to see what the hell they were thinking. But that's my review of this particular movie. It's a shame, and once again, as I said, I've got the Phantasm Remastered Blu-ray. Haven't had time to look at it. I'll probably check it out and review it in early 2017. So thank you very much for watching my review of, my spirits are just talking about this movie, just, I don't know, so low. It's just like, I just don't understand the wisdom behind this project, and in doing it nearly 20 years after the 4th one, and just having it be so repetitious. Like, you know, Reggie picks up a girl and he says the same line, oh, I've been out on the road for a long time, and it's been a, you know, and she turns him down. You just get sick of seeing Reggie, you know, getting older and older, being continuously turned down. And the girls don't get any older, you know. They're the same age. Oh, my stars. Anyway. Yeah, and then the Spheres just drilling this chick, you know, in her farmhouse and up in her room. And it's just like, Spheres just go anywhere now. And it's just like, anyway, I gotta stop complaining about this movie. Thank you very much for watching, if you watched this whole review, and as always, we'll catch you next time.